In this tutorial, we're going to use Adobe Illustrator CC 2020 to go through Classroom in a Book, Chapter 12, which is about using brushes to create a poster. So we're going to create this kind of side effect poster today. So let's go ahead and grab that L12 start file. Let's do a file save as. And go into our lesson 12. Let's change it to a first initial last name, underscore Adobe Illustrator, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 12. 12 would be good. And save. All right, so let's make sure we're all starting from the same place. Let's go to a window. Let's go to our workspace and make sure we reset our essentials so we're all starting in about the same spot. So if you see in this one, we're going to use quite a few of the different types of brushes in order to create this end one. So if you can see in the end, we've got kind of these bits of wind, we've got some smoke coming up from the chimney, some flowers on the trees, a few of the lights on the porch here, and a funky fern. So we're going to learn how to play with our different types of brushes to create those elements. So today let's go ahead and start with our calligraphy types brushes, and we're going to use those to create those wind bits. So let's go ahead with our window and let's go to brushes. And within brushes, you have the ability to determine what types of brushes are showing at a time. So I'm going to go ahead to my hamburger menu. And let's go ahead and click all these off so we're only looking at the calligraphy ones. And let's go ahead and make sure we're on list view so we can actually see what type of brushes we're going to be playing with here. So let's go to our selection menu. And let's make sure we're on our artboard number 1. Let's go to view, fit our artboard window. And let's grab our selection and grab one of these pink lines. So rather than having to select them all separately, we can go to our select same stroke color. So select same, and we want stroke color, so it'll grab all those at once. And we can play with multiple at a single time. So let's go ahead to our brush and choose this 40 point flat and apply that to our pink paths. Now we don't necessarily want to keep them pink. We're going to mess with that here in a minute. Let's go ahead to our properties panel, change that stroke width up to about 3 points. And let's go to our swatches file. So let's go here to our stroke and go to our, make sure your swatches are showing. And let's go ahead and change those into white, which is going to be about the 4th one over on the first row. And we can go ahead and hit escape to hide that swatches panel. Now let's go to our properties and bring that opacity down to about 20%, or you can type it in to make those kind of see-through. And let's go ahead and deselect and do a Control S and save what we've got so far. Now you'll notice that these strokes go off of the artboard. If they didn't, you'd end up with kind of like what you do right here, how you got kind of this strange little spot. So I actually can drag that path and just drag it out just a little tiny bit more. So it drags it off the edge and I don't end up with a really rough, stark mark there. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is draw with one of the paintbrush tools. So we're going to actually draw kind of that funky, some funky kind of, I don't know what it's going to call them, waves. We're working on this part down here. We're going to draw those little wave bits. All right, so let's go to our paintbrush. And let's go to our brush. Let's come down here to our brush libraries in our brush panel. And we want to look at artistic and look at those calligraphy brushes again. Let's go ahead and switch that into our list view so we can see kind of what's going on. Bring that down. And let's go ahead this time and grab the 15 point flat in order to add it to our brushes panel. So let's double click it. Now it's in our brushes panel. And we can go ahead and close those down. Now with our 15 point flat, let's make sure our fill color is set to none and our stroke color is set to water, which is actually this kind of see-through one on the second row. And let's make it down to about a 1 point. Hit escape and hide those swatches. Take it down to 1 point. And now we're going to go ahead and leave our opacities back up at 100%. And we're just going to go ahead and draw kind of some curves in the water. There's not a perfect way to do this, and you can go back and change them later on. So let's go ahead with our brush. And we should have it right here. We're about to paint with our new brush. There we go. So kind of whatever you like. We can change these after the fact, so if you don't like one, we can always go back and change it. All right, so let's go ahead. If you got anything selected, go ahead, poke out, deselect all. Oop, don't do what I just did, undo. And do a Control S and save what we've got right there. So now if we want to, we can actually edit some of those paths. So maybe we decide we don't like some of what we just did. So we'll grab our selection tool. I'm gonna go ahead and grab this one right here because I decide I don't like that one. And I can select my paintbrush over here in the toolbar. I can actually redraw part of those paths. So you can always hit Alt, which will take you back to your selection tool. I should take you to your selection tool, so we can add some more there. Let's go ahead, it's Command. Let's grab Command, switch to selection. You can redraw some of those paths. We're going to draw a few more. Totally up to you as to how you're going to put in those bits there in the water. So now what can we do? We can also change some of the paintbrushes as we go along. So let's go ahead and do a deselect if you've got anything selected. I don't have anything, and let's do Control S and save what we've got so far. So switch to selection and Control S. All right, so now let's use that paintbrush tool to edit one of the paths that we just painted. So we went ahead, we moved those around. So what else can we do? Let's go ahead and with the paintbrush, let's grab our paintbrush tool and let's move our paintbrush over one of those selected paths that we just made. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go into this one. And let's grab our, okay, so we just did that. All right, we did that. Sorry. File and save. And deselect, so it doesn't want me to deselect. Sorry, guys. All right, let's go ahead. So let's double click on the paintbrush tool in the bar, and we're gonna go ahead and make a few changes to it. So let's double click here on our paintbrush. And let's go ahead and take that fidelity, take it all the way to the smoothest part possible. So it's probably in the middle, so let's take it to smooth. And now let's go ahead and say keep selected. And let's say OK. So now when we do this, we can actually draw some new paths without having to go back and select them each time. So let's bump our stroke up to 2 points. And with the paintbrush, let's go ahead and draw a few more little waves in our water. These ones are going to be a little bit thicker. You go ahead and have those cross each other, do whatever you want. All right. And so we can go back through now. We can see that those are still selected. So I could go through and redraw those because it's still selected. So let's go ahead and turn that selected off. Let's go to our paintbrush tool and do keep selected and turn that off. And now the paths are not going to remain selected, and say OK. Well, let's make sure we have nothing selected. So select and deselect and do a Control S to save what we've got now. So now we're going to go ahead and change some of the options for our brush. So in our brushes panel, we want to go ahead and double click that brush thumbnail for 15 flat. And we're going to go ahead and change some of those options. So let's go ahead and change the name to 20 point angled. So 20 PT, not 220. And let's go ahead and change that angle to 20% and make it fixed instead of random. Roundness, let's leave at 0, and size, let's make it 20. And you go ahead and turn your preview on if you want to. And take that up to 20. And we'll go ahead and say OK. We want to go ahead and do leave strokes so that none of the strokes that we just drew are going to get affected by that. So they're all going to stay the same. So now let's go ahead and make sure we have nothing selected. And we're going to go ahead and remove and play with some of those brush strokes. So Let's go ahead now and remove a brush stroke. So now you could easily go through and draw some other things. All right, let's go with our selection tool and grab that purple line. So we're actually going to make this line into a tree eventually. So right now what we want to do is remove the brush stroke that's making it up right now. Let's come down here to the end of our brushes and do remove brush stroke. And it doesn't actually remove the stroke color and weight, it just removes the brush that is applied. So let's go ahead and change that stroke weight up to about 10 points. And eventually we're going to turn it into a tree, but we're not doing it quite yet. So let's do a select and a deselect and a Control S to save. So now we're going to go ahead and make that line eventually into an art brush. So let's go ahead and take a look at our art brushes first. So let's go to our hamburger menu. Let's go ahead and show art brushes. Go back to hamburger, turn off the calligraphy, make sure you're on your list view so we can actually see them. Let's go down to our brush library. In our brush library, let's go to artistic. We want charcoal, the chalk charcoal pencil. And let's go ahead and pull that down. If you're not seeing it as a list, go ahead and make sure you've got your list view turned on. And let's go ahead and grab the one called charcoal. You see it's going to go ahead and add that up to my brushes up here. And let's go ahead and close that one down. We don't need it anymore. So now we're going to go ahead and grab our paintbrush over in the toolbar. And this time we're actually going to be drawing that funky little fern thing over here on the side. All right, so I'm going to grab my fern. I'm going to make sure that my fill color is set to none. Then my stroke color is set to fern green, which is the second row and the third one in, fern green. I'm going to change that weight up to about 10 points. And we're going to move it over to this this section over here until we get the star. And we're going to create a plant. So we're going to kind of just draw along. And we're making some palm fronds. So it's kind of a fern. Maybe you want to add a couple other ferns. Maybe add a fern over here. Up to you as to what you're going to do with your funky fern bits. Maybe a little tiny fern over here. Whoop, undo. So you probably want to vary the size a little bit. All right, so now I have my ferns. If you don't like it, you can always undo, go back, fix it. All right, so let's go and try and create those into some groups. So let's go same. So select same stroke color. And it's going to select all of those. And we're going to go ahead and group them so they're all one big group. And we can't accidentally grab them. Let's do select and deselect and do a Control S to save what we've got so far. So at this point, let's go ahead and create that art brush for that tree. So let's go to our artboard number 2. And we've got kind of a tree already here. Let's go ahead and make a selection of a tree. Let's go to our window and brushes if you don't already have it open. And we want to go ahead and do the new brush, which used to look like a Post-it note, now has a plus sign. And we're going to go through and create a new brush. So we're going to create a new art brush and say OK. We're going to go ahead and grab this. We're going to call this tree instead. Let's go ahead and we don't need to change anything else. Yes, we do. Nope, we're just going to push OK. And let's go ahead and select and deselect that tree. Let's go over here to our selection mode. Let's go back over to our lake and grab our selection tool and grab that purple bar. And now we're going to click on that brush named tree, and we're going to go ahead and apply it. So it's going to go ahead and turn that into a tree right there where you did have that line. So it's a really nice and easy way to figure out where you're going to put some elements as you're going forward. So it's stretched along the path. So what if we want to now change that tree? Because you see it's kind of a little bit, all these are kind of like lollipop trees, and this one's got a much shorter stem. Let's go ahead and double click and change it. So we want to go ahead and make sure we can see our preview. So we want to do stretch between guides instead. And we're going to go ahead and tell it where we want to put those guides. So we're going to put that guide, we just want the stem part. So 5.875. I'm going to hit tab. We're going to leave the bottom there. So we're just going to go ahead and tell it to stretch that one section and say OK. And we're going to go ahead and tell it to apply to strokes because we do want to change the one we just made. And see, now we've got kind of a lollipop tree, which is pretty fun. So if you can see, if you take that brush, you can actually draw. Oh, I drew it upside down. You can draw different types of tree brushes over here if you could add more into your poster if you wanted to. So it's kind of a fun way to add some additional curvy elements. Oh, that one's fun. Let's see if we can do it really weird. Oh, we can't really see it. You select all those and get rid of them. Let's try it one more time. Oh, I love that. Okay, I'm weird. Anyway, let's go ahead and do a Control S and save and deselect. And I'm going to go ahead and break this video into a second part. When we pick up, we're going to pick up with the bristle brushes.